Good morning, everybody. Almost afternoon. I'll go ahead and call this meeting to order. This is the Municipality of Anchorage Board of Building Regulation Examiners and Appeals, our meeting on June 18th. This is a regularly scheduled meeting that has been delayed a few months. And first of all, Tam, could I get you to do a roll call?
Certainly. Mr. Straight?
Present.
Mr. Fredine?
Present.
Mr. Cowling?
Present.
Mr. Boney?
Present.
Mr. McCann?
He can't get on, Mr. McCann.
Okay.
He's on the phone.
Have him call my cell. 917-6792. Okay, and Mr. McCann will be calling here shortly to get on through my cell phone. Mr. Soboleski, you can type it in the comment chat. Thank you. Mr. Feller said that he was out on a business trip, so he is absent. Mr. Field?
Here.
And Tyler said he was out of town as well. So I'm going to wait until Mr. Steele. Mr. Steele said your phone was on mute, voicemail.
Tell them to try again, but
Unknown caller.
There you go. So
hello, Bob Dole here.
Hey Bob, this is John Steele. Tana suggested I call in this number.
Yes, thank you so much.
and now we have Mr. Steele online and Mr. McCann. As soon as he comes in, I will make note of it in the records. So now I will move on to staff. Mr. Dole,
Present.
Mr. Heil,
Present, had to turn on your mic on, sorry.
Hi, this is Tana.
Tana, Don McCann, say, I tried that number.
No problem. For some reason, it is not working, so I'm glad you called my cell.
Okay. And how do I get hooked up to it then?
Virtue, you are now hooked up and into the meeting.
Okay.
So it will be via cell.
Okay.
Okay.
And do I call another number?
No, you do not. You are online now. We're good to go, and I've got you marked in as present.
Oh, okay. I'll just listen to it then. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Heil, are you available?
I thought Gary answered you, was there?
Okay.
Yeah, present.
Ross Knopfinger,
Present.
Becky Hellman,
Present.
Wayne Bolin,
Here.
Lee Bergstrom. Okay, and Bart Meinhardt.
Here.
Okay, you have a quorum, Chair.
Okay. Thank you very much. Can I ask that any cell phone people that are joining through our convenient conference line here, could you set the cell phones as close as you can to a microphone? It's tough to hear them when they speak. I believe that'd be Mr. Steele and Mr. McCann.
I am doing that now.
Mr. Steele, can you hear me?
No, he could not hear you.
How about Mr. McCann? Can you hear me?
Are they in the meeting or are they just on cell?
They're on my our work cell phone numbers. So, Mr. Steele, can you hear us?
With some trouble, I assumed that was Mr. Straight asking some questions, but I was getting some squealy sounds.
Okay, how about you, Mr. McCann?
I can hear fine.
Thank you. I did turn up the volume on the audio, so.
Okay.
All right, so I'll check again at my end. Mr. Steele, can you understand me and hear the conversation now?
I heard that. Thank you, Mr. Straight.
And you, Mr. McCann?
Yes, I can hear.
And Mr. Soboleski, by text response, can you hear us?
Yes.
Excellent. Now, I will say I'm running this off my iPad, so apparently I cannot see texting and video at the same time. So please let me know if Mr. Sobolewski is saying something so I don't miss it.
I will do so.
All right, with that, I believe we are ready to attempt this. The first item on our agenda is approval of the agenda. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda as written? Let's put forward.
I move we approve the agenda.
And that is by Mr. Field?
Field, yes.
Scott, I second.
Okay.
So I believe we have a motion and a second. Any discussion on the agenda? Then we want to see added, removed, moved around. Hearing none, we will vote by voice of affirmation. All those in favor of approving the agenda as submitted, please say aye.
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 Do we have any opposed? Or any abstaining? Hearing none, we have an approved agenda. Excellent. Moving on to the next item is approval of our minutes from our last meeting. Our last meeting was on March 7th, 2019, where let's see, what did we do? We elected chairs at that time. We reviewed our 3-panel board listing, and that was about it. The meeting minutes were sent out by Tana yesterday for everybody to take a look at. Do I have a motion to consider approval of these minutes?
Mr. Chairman, this is Mr. Steele. I move to approve the minutes as submitted.
This is Mr. Field, I second.
Thank you very much. Any discussion, any comments or questions about those minutes?
This is Craig. I have no comment about the minutes, but since it's been over a year since our last meeting, we should be mindful of anybody who is not able to attend this meeting that they get excused, because there was some assembly verbiage that was going back and forth was a year or two ago about if you miss more than 50% of the meetings in a year, you get kicked off the committee. So we need to make sure anybody who's not here gets a formal, so no one gets kicked off, since we only had one meeting in a year.
I have already noted that, and I will make sure of it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ferdinand. That's a good point. Any other discussion on the meeting minutes from our last meeting? Hearing none. All those in favor of approving the minutes from our March 7th, 2019 meeting, please say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Or any abstaining? Okay, hearing none, I believe we have approved minutes. Moving on to our new business. Item A is elections. So as this is our first meeting of the year, this is the time where we elect our chair and vice chair. So I will go ahead and start this with election of the chair. I'd like to open up the nomination to the group. Are there any nominations for the chair of our board?
Mr. Chairman, this is Mr. Steele. Could I ask a question? Looking at the board members and their year or date that they'll either need to be reappointed or not a board member, that rules out myself, Mr. McCain, and I believe yourself. Should there be consideration made that some of these names would be reappointed, or is there any discussion on how we might want to approach that? I mean, the safe thing in my mind would be to pick a date or pick someone who is going to certainly be on the the board through the 21 calendar year.
So that would be Mr. Feller, Mr. Fredine, Mr. Soboleski, Mr. Cowling, Mr. Boney, Mr. Field, and Mr. Loken.
Correct.
Tana, has there been any are any of the people who are, this is Craig, are any of the people who are up for reappointment not going to be up for, or not going to request for reappointment?
I have not asked. I was going to ask when we get down into reports, and Mr. Straight, Mr. Steele, and Mr. McCann are the three gentlemen who will be needing to be reappointed in October, and if they wanted to do so.
Mr. Chairman, this is Mr. Steele. I do enjoy being on the board, and I've enjoyed a very long history, but I think it's reached a point where it's really almost somewhat embarrassing in terms of how long beyond term limits I've served. And I would like my name to not be considered, because I do think this will be my last term through through October. So I would like to remove my name for any considerations.
This is Mr. McCann, and I would be able to leave my provide my services towards this board for the next year.
Excellent, thank you. What I would propose we do is if your name is nominated and you do not feel you will be reapplying for the board, make that statement and that'll clarify the nomination situation. To my knowledge, there's not much of a question. If you are willing, we will take you and continue your service on the board. Dana, please correct me if I'm wrong, but unless something changes, if you want to stay on the board, you're likely to stay.
Exactly.
So is there any?
With that, are we open for nominations then?
We are.
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, this is Mr. Steele. I would like to nominate Sterling Straight for chair.
I would second that. This is Mr. Field.
I appreciate your confidence. Do we have any other nominations? Well, then what I would like to do is recuse myself from the chair, as we do not have a vice chair. Mr. Steele, as our august member, would you be willing to take over the chair for this portion of the meeting?
Certainly. I'm assuming that there were no further nominations for the chair, so with that, it's unanimous supporting Mr. Straight as chair. And then moving forward, I'd like to open it for nominations for vice chair.
Mr. Steele, we have to get unanimous approval.
Oh,
Everybody's,
I'm sorry.
Everybody's got to say aye.
Mr. Straight was passing it on. All right, then, at this point, I would like, are there any further nominations? Hearing none, I'd like to call the question of Mr. Straight as chairman. Are there any objections to Mr. Straight serving as chairman? Any abstentions?
I am abstaining.
Other than Mr. Straight. Based on that, it's a unanimous selection. Congratulations, Mr. Straight.
Thank you.
Now I can pass it back to you, correct?
Correct.
All right. And again, I appreciate your confidence. I'd like to open up the next part of the meeting for our vice chair. I'd like to open it up for nominations for the vice chair.
Mr. Chairman, this is Mr. Steele. I would like to nominate Mr. Fields.
Okay. We have a nomination for Mr. Fields.
I appreciate that, but I'm going to decline that. Respectfully decline that.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, if I might, I'd like to make a second nomination, and that would be Mr. Sobolewski.
Keith, you were just nominated. Are you good with the nomination? He is.
Good.
And he said thank you.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Steele. Do we have any other nominations?
Mr. Chairman, this is Mr. McCann. I would like to nominate Gary Heil for vice chair.
Oh, we can't nominate Gary. Sorry, Mr. McCann.
Oh, okay.
Any other nominations? All right, hearing none, I'll put it to the question. All those in favor of Mr. Sobolewski serving as vice chair for our board, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? And any abstaining? All right. Congratulations, Mr. Sobolewski. Thank you for your willingness to serve.
And this is Bob Dole. For the record, Mr. Sobolewski did abstain from the vote since he was the person that was, that you guys were voting on.
He says thank you all, Mr. Sobolewski did.
And yes, as a point of order, please continue to read those out since, although I can't see it in Microsoft Teams and others may, not all of us are on Teams, some are on the phone, so please continue to read out any written messages. Appreciate that. Thank you. All right, our next item of business is 3-member panels. As this is on our agenda, typically in the past, we have reviewed and discussed the composition of people assigned to each 3-member panel. When a 3-member panel type appeal comes up, staff goes to that list of people and asks who's available to be able to find a time for those meetings. At this point, I guess, Hannah, I would ask you, what would you like from us on the 3-member panel meeting list? I don't believe we have an updated copy of those distributed at this time.
Okay, right now, as of last year, March 7th, we have 4 panels. One is electrical, mechanical plumbing, civil structural, and architectural. Right now on electrical, it is Mr. Cowling, Mr. Field, Mr. Straight, or sorry, not Mr. Straight, Mr. Steele, Mr. Boney, and Mr. Fredine.
That sounds appropriate. Everybody on that list, is that acceptable to be an option for an electrical appeal?
I'm still on. Eric. It's Mr. Field. I'm still good.
Mr. Boney, I'm so good.
How about you, Mr. Fredine?
This is Fredine. I'm still good. And bingo on things being done on Zoom meetings. Forgot to have my mute button on. So there we go.
No worries. All right, next up, mechanical and plumbing. Mr. Fredine, Mr. Sobolewski, Mr. McCann, and alternate was Mr. Loken.
Fredine is good.
McCann is good.
And Mr. Sobolewski is good. So with Mr. Loken, we'll keep him as alternate. Now for civil structural, we have Mr. Loken, Mr. Straight, Mr. Feller, and Mr. Mr. Field as alternate.
This is Mr. Steele. I'm good for the balance of my term.
This is Mr. Straight. I'm good as well.
This is Mr. Field. I'm good as well.
And Mr. Feller, we'll just assume is good as well. And last is architectural. We have Mr. Boney, Mr. Steele, Mr. Loken, Mr. Straight as alternative, Mr. Feller, and Mr. Field as alternative as well.
This is Mr. Steele. I'm good for the balance of my term.
Boney's good.
Mr. Field's good.
So Mr. Straight, I'm good.
Okay, we are done. If we do not, right now I believe we have 10 board members. So if we lose Mr. Steele going, we will need somebody similar like him to at least apply for the board. So if we have any ideas, send them my way and I'll get them directly to the right place to apply. And then we may have to revisit the 3-member panel at a later date.
Mr. Chair, in response to what Tana has just summarized, I noted we're lacking 3 general contractors, 1 residential, and 1 electrical. Are efforts still underway to fill those positions?
Yes.
Thank you.
If anyone has any ideas for filling those, definitely submit them to me and I'll get in contact with them and show them where they need to go if they would like to join the board.
All right, Tana, thank you for walking through our 3-member panel committees. If I could also on the topic ask for a report on any 3-member appeals that have been heard since our last meeting on March 7th, 2019.
We had 1 meeting. It was, I think, at the end of last year, or was it the beginning of...
I believe hi, this is Bob Dole, the building official. Then we have 2. One was the no permit with the plumbing work, and the other one was the general contractor matter. Those were since March of last year.
I think the only one we had... Well, this year was the Mr.
In April.
We did Tyson
Jason
Chang
Chang
this year, but late last year we did the NOPR for the plumbing work with the plumbing.
Oh, yes, we did.
Yeah. Sorry about that. We're coming up with a report as we go here.
The plumbing one was in favor of the Muni. The gentleman did have to work out some permits and some fees, but overall it worked out well. And as for Mr. Chang's,
the building board overturned the building official's decision in terms of going against his company that no longer existed. Successor company doing the permit work is still not resolved the unpermitted matters that came forward in that one.
And as a follow-up question, the 3-member panel process is still relatively new, as it's been on the books for a number of years now, but has not been used excessively. What is the feeling from staff on the success of the program? Do we feel it's working? Do we feel it's superior, inferior to the previous process?
well, I don't mind it because it does free up the rest of the board and trying to find dates and times where everybody is available. And it just takes three board members instead of the full board. So that's my take on it. It does work.
This is Bob Dole. As the building official, I'll defer to Ross Knopfsinger and Gary Heil, who experienced the previous system, I consider it to be an effective utilization of board member time though, and I think it provides that outside look that's important. And they can still go to the full board if they don't like it, but I think it provides that safety valve with less commitment for the adjudication role. But I'll defer to Ross.
I think it's working. I think it's definitely easier to schedule when you don't have to coordinate, that many people, and like I say, any matter could be appealed to the full board. So I kind of think it's been working, and from my perspective.
How about from members of the board? Those of you who've been on panels and experienced them, what are your thoughts?
This is Mr. Field. I've been on a number of them. I mean, it's been a while, but I think it works pretty well, and I think we've all seen how hard it is just to get 3 people together at a time and agree on it. So I can't imagine what it'd be like to get 10 people or a majority anyway of the board to agree to hearings. So I think there is some good.
This is Scott. I was concerned about this in the beginning, that it was going to take a 6-week process and condense it down to about 10 weeks. However, I've seen very few appeals to a 3-member panel, so it seems to be working. So I'm in favor of continuing.
This is Mr. McCann, and I agree that the 3-member panel worked out quite well.
Mr. Boney, I could hear you make a comment, but I couldn't quite hear all of it. Would you mind repeating that a little closer to the microphone?
I believe he said he was in agreement that it was working well. To summarize.
I'm sorry, was that to Mr. Steele?
Yes, it was. No, it was to
Yes,
Mr. Boney.
I'm sorry, I was interrupting Mr. Boney, but my feeling on the 3 panel is so far it has worked well. I've been on a few of them, and I think it is worthy of keeping in play.
This is Mr. Field. I guess I'd like to add that, in the beginning when we started it, we would get all the case information right at the time. We would walk in and we could get literally 50, 100 pages of documents we were supposed to review and approve that night, and that was a very uncomfortable situation. But since that's been changed to where we're supposed to get the documents, is it a week or 10 days? I don't remember now, but at least a week. And as long as that process is continued and we get the documents at least a week in advance, I obviously agree with everybody else that it's a good process.
I will note that we do have that wording that is on the appeal form, telling everybody how to fill it out. That is supposed to be going in on this code cycle. So I'm sure we're supposed to be updating 2 places on that. So I'll let you know when that happens.
Great.
Okay, well, thank you very much. I do want to chime in as well that from my experience, the 3-member panel process works well. It's a smaller group, which makes for an easier time for discussing topics. And I do want to extend my thanks to the staff for making it work and making it as available as an option to the public when they have issues. I think it's a good use of our board. Thank you. All right, and moving on to our next item of business is local amendments to the 2018 building code, and I will turn it over to staff to introduce the topic.
I guess that's me. Yeah, so we hit you guys with, a 230-page document with all the proposed amendments to the 2018 codes. It's been a long time coming. There's a lot of people that's put a lot of time into this. I apologize for the omission of the structural sections. That's totally on me. But I think that the document that you have now, and with that omitted information highlighted in red, is a good, solid, complete document. I also drafted the Exhibit B significant changes document, where I worked with the various staff members on the boards to pull together what we felt would be the most contentious proposed code issues, and the primary reason was to put that together for the assembly, because obviously we can't expect the assembly to really understand this 230-page document that amends several thousand pages of technical code material. So if there's any questions before we proceed, I would be open to answer those.
Mr. Chairman, this is Mr. Steele.
Excuse me, Mr. Steele is trying to talk, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Steele, before we move into questions, I'd like to ask for some clarification from staff on where this is in the process, as far as we received the proposed language, has it been submitted to the assembly? When is that going to occur, and where does it go from here?
So legal is pretty much done with their review. As soon as the board blesses the 2018 codes, legal is probably going to be able to create the ordinance within a week or two, and put it into the system where it goes to the assembly. So the ordinance should reach the assembly by July.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Steele, you had a comment.
Well, maybe I should wait here and find out the process we want to go through here. As I reviewed a couple of sections, I just had some general intent or editing questions, comments, and I thought maybe it would be easier to get that clarified before we go into any action, but I'm more than willing to wait and deal with it as we approve each section, either way that you would like to go.
I would say we go with that method. Let's wait until, let's hold the technical questions until we get through the process part of this.
Thank you.
And then we can address any individual items. So the next part I'd ask staff to speak to is the code committee process. How many committees did we have? When was their work completed? Do we have confirmation from each committee that they've reviewed the updated document and that they're satisfied with all the changes that were put into it?
No, I do not believe we have confirmation from the committees that they've reviewed each document. I will let the staff members here can speak to that. I know the residential code 2318 did go to the residential committee, but Keith, maybe you could speak to the plumbing code and the mechanical and fuel gas codes, whether or not the committees were able to see a summary of those amendments. Maybe he's typing.
While he's typing, would you give an overview of what the committees were? How many committees we had?
So there was a fire code committee. There was an IBC and an IEBC structural committee. There was an IBC and IEBC non-structural committee. And the non-structural committee also looked at the commercial energy code provisions for envelope compliance. There was a mechanical Energy Code Committee. There was an Electrical Energy Code Committee. There was an IRC committee. The IRC committee also looked at the residential energy code requirements. There was a plumbing code committee, mechanical code, a combination mechanical code, fuel gas code committee, and the fire code committee. I think I did say that, yeah.
And what is the process of the committees submitting amendments, approving amendments? How do those get incorporated into this document?
Well, all the amendments were generated by the committees.
Mr. Chairman, this is Mr. Steele, and the fire committee did not formally deal with this specific document relative to action, but at our last meeting, there had been actually 2 times prior to that, we had updates with the edits in hand, and there were no comments to the contrary in terms of covering all the content and decisions. And the final action, which dealt with the state of Alaska's request relative to assisted care facilities, has been incorporated based on the action of the fire committee. So as the chair, I believe it is reflective of the committee's intent and action.
Thank you, Mr. Steele.
As for the IBC non-structural, I sat on that, and we did vote on amendments as we went, so we've got concurrence on those. The committee has not seen the overall document to do a final proof that was put together by staff, but I did have a conversation with staff in putting that together, and they had my notes, so I'm sure it's in accordance with what we had voted on as we reviewed and approved the code amendments.
Okay, and Mr. Sobolewski typed in, I haven't distributed the IMC or IFGC specifically to the committee. However, I have sent it out to some members of the community. I haven't received any feedback.
And this is Mr. Ferdine. I chaired the plumbing code, and similar to previous comments, I do not believe the committee received the full final version of it, but we were sending out PDFs of the action items as we got them updated and sent back out for review, and I did not receive any comments back on the review from the committee during the process, so what got posted should be a reflection of what we discussed in the committee meetings.
And this is Eric Cowling. I chaired the committee for IECC, and we made it through the process. I don't believe I remember seeing the final copy distributed or developed any further than we voted on it at the end of the process, and that's the last I've heard of it. And I would add, this is Eric again, the NEC is in between iterations. We're getting ready to start the process for the 2020 code. So we're not up for any amendments in this, any new ones that I know of.
Actually, Eric, there is that one EV charging amendment to the NEC.
Yeah, that's true. That 210.52, that is to the NEC. That's true. We need to talk about that one a little bit when the time is appropriate.
And I can speak for the structural IBC committee that I was the chair of. We completed our work a year ago in May 19. finished our work, and then part of the reason I'm asking this is when the original copy came out, several of our amendments had not been included in the Title 23 draft that was issued 2 weeks ago. And working with staff, that's been corrected, but I feel that it would be, it behoove us to have each committee have at least somebody do a check, a trust but verify to ensure that the amendments were included correctly in the final draft. Has that been done before? Do we have a process for that? Ross, what would you recommend? Do you think that's worth the effort to take that step?
You know, that's been the normal process in the past, and I think maybe just by the way this drug on and that it kind of got dropped by the various committees. And so at this point, since we've assembled, you know, a nice coherent final document here, that we could submit that to every single member on every single committee to do a review and basically table this, you know, give ourselves a few weeks or whatever and meet again on it. I mean, that's the board's call.
Mr. Chair, I'd make a motion to follow that recommendation. I think that's a good idea.
So we have a motion to make sure we're on the same page. Your motion needs to be table recommending the adoption of the codes for a period of time.
For review by each of the committees.
Do we have a second on that, Mr. McCann?
Would a 2-week review period be adequate?
I believe so.
Tana, would you be kind enough to read back what you have written down as the motion so that to ensure we're on the same page?
Okay, right now the motion is to table the review right now from the board of the local amendments so that it can be sent out for a 2-week review for the committees. And then we will reschedule another board meeting to approve.
Concur.
Do I have a second?
Mr. Chairman, this is Mr. Steele. Was there a second? I'm sorry, I didn't hear.
Not yet.
Okay.
I'm looking for a second now. Do we have one?
Was there a second in that?
This is Mr. Ferdine. I'll second that.
Thank you.
All right, so now opening up for discussion.
This is Eric Cowling. I'd like to explain that there are a few issues that we're noting that's as discussed about after reviewing this, we're seeing a few things that maybe we need to address besides even any items that come up through the committee's review. But I would like a 2-week period to address in a little more detail this EV charger requirements that we've added. I was working on it with the electrical inspectors to address their concerns, and I never got the feedback back from them on our responses back and forth, so I'd like to clear that up. And I have another issue with an IMC requirement that I'd like to address. So this period would allow that time frame to clear those up, and I think it would be worth our while to do that.
Now, I would caution the board on this topic that we're all familiar with the concept of scope creep, and the problem of reviewing something multiple times is you're going to find something new every time. So I want to caution the board that we make it clear that's not our intent here. Our intent is not to find more topics to include, but to review previously discussed and approved amendments by each committee and ensure that they were correctly incorporated.
All right, and Mr. Sobolewski noted 2 weeks drives us into the 4th of July week. Just a consideration since committee members may be busy. So if we were to do that, I looked on the calendar, the next meeting would be July 9th. Well, actually it'd be the 2nd of July, or we would move it to the July 16th, where it's a normal standard regular meeting.
16th.
point. Thank you for bringing that up. It is, after all, summer in Alaska, and we're mostly allowed outside.
So is it a friendly acceptance to the makers of the motion for the 16th to be the date, July 16th?
We have yet to send it out for ayes or nays.
No, but we need
That
to
was, I
amend it.
understood that right,
Now
we're
in
amending
2
the
weeks.
motion.
Friendly amendment.
Yeah, I would agree with that friendly amendment, the 16th.
So
This
date
is Mr.
specific.
Steen. I'll the second agrees.
And Mr. Chair, this is Eric again. To clarify, I'm not looking to add anything. I'm looking to reduce what we have as a requirement in both of my issues that I want to address. We could probably do it today if possible. It might take some time, but I feel like we need feedback from others that on the committees for both of these topics more than likely.
Mr. Chair, this is Mr. Fredine. I concur with the pushback. I would like to take some time to verify the amendments gotten put in, and also I think it is good for all of our committees to have a second chance to see the final product before it gets to the assembly. I would recommend to the chairs that we set a drop date deadline to our committees for providing feedback, because most likely no one's going to provide feedback.
Yeah.
But I don't know, maybe the 8th, July 8th for our committees to provide any feedback on issues with the proposed amendments.
I would concur with that.
And Mr. Chair, is the intent of this just for our committees to review the entire document, or the sections that were just pertinent to their committee? Because I can definitely see, like you're saying, some scope creep of all of a sudden if we start looking in we have 100 people looking throughout the other sections, might create some issues.
As I see it, the intent would be for each committee to review their section against their approved amendments to ensure that they were interpreted and copied down correctly.
This is Mr. Field, and as the chair indicated, he's really looking for people just to verify that the amendments that they put forth and agreed to add to the amendments are actually in there. And I think that I'm familiar a little bit with what Eric's talking about, and I think it one of the issues anyway, and it has to do with amendments that were added that maybe shouldn't be added. So I think that you're correct, Mr. Chair, in that each committee should just review what they were to review, and it's not to add more amendments, but to make sure that the amendments that they had anticipated being added are added and that they are correct.
Mr. Chair, this is Mr. Steele. I agree with what Mr. Field said, with one exception in the last. I think if the committee sees other amendments that have been overlooked, it would still be appropriate to put those forward for committee action. But again, keep it into the group of the subsection of the code book you're dealing with.
This is Mr. Field, I concur.
This is Mr. Strait. I would disagree with that sentiment for the reason that each committee we've all had our chances on our committee. We spent time reviewing, we approved amendments, and we said, pencils down, we were done. Now that happened to be, at least for my committee, over a year ago. So in the year that's passed, it's very likely that somebody may have thought of something else. There's more that can be done. There's always more that can be done. But if we open this up for committees to bring in new amendments, it's unlikely we'll be able to meet any deadline.
Whoops. Mr. Straight, this is Mr. Steele, if I might. I think everything should be in play if we're going to go through the process of validating the amendments. I think all the committee chairs and members understand that it was spread out over a lot of time, and different faces were or were not at certain meetings, but it certainly was a quorum that acted at each one. For the fire committee, as I said before, we distributed the final document in updated stages numerous times through the process, but I still, if we're going back to look at certain issues that may have been overlooked or needing adjustment, I still think it's appropriate to have the opportunity for the committee to respond and influence another amendment or elimination if it's viewed possible and is supported by the committee. Timing is critical. I recognize that, but if we're going back to the validation, I think it should be an open process and be viewed as that. Thank you.
More discussion? Any more comments?
From my point of view, Mr. Chair, this is Eric Cowling, if I may. From my point of view, is really to not reopen this back up for anything other than verifying we've got them all in the document that we had already proposed, and that we would just amend any that isn't. I mean, if we found some language in the amendment that looks like it's a problem, or that it isn't exactly what we needed written, I don't know that I can't even think of any of why we would need to revisit new items. I haven't heard of anything coming up that would be that, and probably isn't really an issue, but it does seem like it could be a little bit open-ended if we just open it up for new amendments, new sections to be amended. So I guess I'm saying I would favor it being limited to the amendments we have, verifying that they all got inserted in the document and that they are correct as written.
So, Mr. Chairman, if I might ask a question to Mr. Cowling, so what if one is eliminated? How does that validate the process?
If when you say eliminated, you mean eliminated previously?
If the committee gets together and says, well, this one really isn't necessary or needed based on whatever conversations or discussions, and it's revised, that's no different than something new coming to light, is it?
I feel like that amendment was already being addressed, and it's not bringing something new to the table. But maybe I'm looking at it too simply.
Mr. Chairman, this is Mr. Ferdine. What I'm going to be recommending to my plumbing committee, first off, I would like to request from staff if we can get the electronic copies of just something for the sections that we worked on. So, for instance, if I can get an electronic copy of just the plumbing code that I can send out to my committee, and what I will be recommending in my email to the committee will be, please review to verify that the amendments that we discussed during the committee have been properly tabulated, written down, collected, whatever synonym you want to use in that process. But that unless there is an extreme need to change anything, since this has already gone through law, that at this point we are in a review process only, and unless they have an extreme need to make any modifications in addition or subtraction, and then bring it up to the chair. And if we need to bring it out to the entire committee, for votes. The purpose of the 8th is to give us a week to get things worked out in our committee in case anything is brought up. And then anything that is, and then that's what I'm recommending that's what I'm going to be doing to my committee. And then if there's any cross-discipline issues between the codes, I recommend that be done at the board level. So for instance, if Mr. Cowling has an IMC item he'd like to have reviewed, that is done at the building board level rather than getting the committees involved in that process.
Through the chair, if I may, the only part of the process that was lacking was kind of like a review for completeness process, a peer review process. It would actually make more work for staff at this point to try and produce documents that are specific to each section. I guess what we would do is take the legal document and just start chopping it apart and sending those to the various committees. It would actually be easier for us just to send them the document that's in legal right now and just have them review their respective chapters for completeness, for omissions, for things that underwent editorial changes that may have ended up missing the point or the intent.
Mr. Boney, can I throw out an idea here?
Go ahead, sir.
What happens if we don't take just all the committees, we just deal with this as the chairs, and we, each of us, look at the committees that we were in charge of, and make sure that those documents are put in so we don't open Pandora's box here.
It seems like a good idea.
This is Wayne. I just wanted to add that the structural committee, we had 20 plus people on our sign-on sheet, and we never had half that many people show up. So there's a lot of people on the committee that never came to a meeting, or they came to a couple meetings. So if we send it to everybody, it could be a long process. I don't know. So
yeah.
So.
Mr. Chair, this is Eric Cowling. Even just having the committee chairmans review it, wouldn't we still need to add some time for this process?
Correct. I would support the same time frame. Yes, we would still need time.
So I think the motion still stands the same. It's just the process which we would go through to get the information back for final approval.
Mr. Chairman, this is Mr. Steele. After listening to quite a bit of the conversation, I'm rethinking my mindset on the approach, and I'm confident of distribution to the committee members, but I think it's distribution with the intent, with the accuracy of capturing the amendments and the actions made by the committee. It's not to open it up again for new amendments unless it's very compelling, and that needs to be stated very succinctly and clearly in a timely manner so that the committee can act on it and bring it forward as they feel appropriate.
Mr. Chair, this is Mr. Field. I do kind of agree with Wayne, though. I think that would be no reason to send them out to committee members that never participated. I mean, I don't know why we would want to do that. I think that, I don't know how you break it down, but obviously there were people that participated faithfully the majority of the time, and they're the ones that came up with the amendments. I think it should be, I agree with Mr. Boland that that's probably the best group to give it to rather than 10 other people that maybe came to one meeting out of 20 or 30, you know.
Maybe Mr. Fields, there should be an attendance record sent out to all committee members along with the edits. And maybe title it to those that have skin in the game.
Mr. Chair, through the chair to staff, are there any requirements for how we do this QC, this back check?
No, I would say just a process that is reasonable to ensure that accuracy was obtained.
Thank you. So, Mr. Chair, this is Mr. Fredine. What I would recommend then is to leave it up to the chairs of the committees on how best they want to do their QC, just to kind of get this moving forward. If the chair feels that they have a good enough memory to be able to just go through it and do it, to take care of it themselves, fantastic. If the chairs feel that they have a select group of people who showed up to every meeting that they just want to send it to have them back check it, fantastic. If the chair feels like they want to send it to the entire committee, may fortune be ever in your favor.
That was a nice little shake, just saying.
Mr. Chair, this is Becky Hellman. I was on the IRC committee, and right at the end in May when we got done, I did send a copy of all the local amendments to every member on our committee and gave them a 2-week period to proofread it, and I got no response back from them. So I don't know if that's going to be typical of the members, but that's what happened with the IRC committee.
Okay, and so in the proposed method, then as the chair, the request would come to you to take your copy that you sent out at that point, compare it to the proposed Title 23 update, and everything looks straight across the board, reply accordingly, and that's the kind of situation we're talking about, correct?
Correct.
That sounds like a good proposal to me. So as it stands, we have a motion, a general motion to take this step, and we've been talking about the details. I believe we can leave the details to staff to put into place as we discussed. In which case, that brings us back to the amendment. Any further discussion on this topic before we vote on this amendment? Or on this motion?
Chairman, Mr. Steele, so this is to date-specific tabling to the 16th, is that correct?
Correct.
Thank you.
All right, hearing no further discussion, I'd like to call the question. All those in favor of the motion, as I guess before we vote on this, since we've been talking about it, Tana, would you please read the motion in its entirety again?
The motion is to table for today the review of the local amendments and approval of the amendments and send out to the committee for a 2-week review, and then to adjourn to come back on July 16th to approve.
And I believe the friendly amendment removed the 2-week requirement.
Okay.
That falls on a holiday.
And was it, this is Mr. Field, was it to send out the amendments to the committee or the committee chair only?
To the committee chair, and they could decide from there.
Correct.
And is that what the language of the motion, does the language of the motion specifically state one way or another?
No, that was in the discussion.
Okay. All right. So, calling the question, all those in favor of this motion, please say aye.
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 Aye. Aye.
Mr. Sobolewski is aye.
Any opposed? Any abstaining? Hearing none, the motion passes. we will table the local approval, the recommendation of the local amendments till our next meeting. And staff, as you have been in on this discussion, we will trust on you to send these out in the next few days so that the committee chairs can do their review. Thank you for the discussion. Before we move on, I would like to ask a few more questions on this topic. One is involving public involvement in this discussion. So as far as the public involvement, is that adequately covered by the committee review process? Is there any further public notice that needs to be made of us recommending these for adoption? Part of the reason I ask is if I was not on this board, I would have no idea that the MOA is looking to adopt the 2018 codes at this time.
There were notices, and there were notices through to the public requesting people to come out and be on the committees, and there were notices saying that it's in review process, and then the process was done. But other than our notice of this meeting here, and probably there would be another public hearing once it got to the assembly, that has been it.
Is there anything further we as, I guess, the board and the building safety group together need to do to educate the community that this change is coming? Is there more planned, more communication planned at this time?
Well, I mean, we could advertise the next meeting, but I think it would be much more helpful if we could have the meeting in person at Assembly Chambers. You know, if the public did want to somehow comment, that would be a much easier way to accomplish that. It's for all of those who have participated in this process in the past. It's common for no one from the public to show up to that meeting. So I don't really think we're going to have to worry about crowd size or anything like that.
Hi, this is Bob Dole, the building official. We have to provide notice of the upcoming meeting to give that opportunity to speak. And the reason I just stepped out for a moment was trying to find out what happened to the dial-in line that we advertised, and long and short, ITD doesn't, our IT department doesn't know. So technologically, if we're going to do this remotely, we need to fix that part that's key for public access. And that's a do out for us with IT in terms of how we're going to do that. Then what Ross was saying too, I think providing a public forum, we need to look at some means of doing that. The assembly would be great. Otherwise, if that's difficult to be supported by the board members, we could entertain what we could do to provide a public meeting place for them to speak to the board also.
Mr. Chairman, this is Mr. Steele, and historically there's been the opportunity, of course we don't have the times we're in now, but I would suggest, since the call-in line was not working, that we consider strongly that there is a noticed indication of the meeting upcoming for final action by the board, so that if there is any testimony, it can be listened to as part of the deliberations of the board.
When I advertise the meetings, it goes on our website, the Development Services website. It goes on the Boards and Commission website out of the City Hall, as well as I can send a hot bulletin reminding people that it's out for review and approval.
Can you speak to that third option? What is a hot bulletin?
It's called a hot bulletin. It's through Constant Contact. And I usually, we have quite a few people, over 1,700 on our list. And I could blanket, it's what I call a hot bulletin. Blanket everybody saying, hey, here it is. It's on our website. It's up for approval through the building board. And if you want to make comments, email them to us or call in, that kind of thing. When we have our meeting on the 16th.
So this is Mr. Field to the board. while we approve it, we aren't the final approval. The assembly's the final approval, and all your special interest groups, they're going to wait until it gets to the assembly level, and then they're going to try to influence their assembly member to change whatever they want to change. They aren't going to come to us. I mean, they have the option. I mean, the last code scene, there were numerous meetings at the assembly level. At least 3 to 4 different public meetings that they had for review and acceptance of these codes. So anyway, the public definitely has another opportunity beyond us, and most likely multiple times, to go to the assembly and voice their opinion or contact their assembly person. Just so you know, I've been through this. That's what's going to happen. We're going to approve it. No one's going to say anything to us, and it gets to the assembly level, and that's when all the special interest groups come out.
Mr. Chair, this is Mr. Skeel. I agree that that's traditionally what has occurred of late with the last maybe 1, maybe 2 cycles. And it's always been there, I think, in previous cycles. But I would like to again suggest that to remove any doubt or question on the Assembly's part, the fact that we opened up our meeting for comment to the public beyond the committee efforts is still a good validation of the process. And whether people show up or not, that's their choice, obviously. Tana had suggested possibly the vehicle of an email for soliciting comment. I don't know how the board would feel, but maybe putting out notice with an email cutoff date so that that could be assembled and sent to us before our next meeting. But I don't want to glorify things and make them grander than they need to be, but I still think it shows a due diligence for an open process.
This is Mr. Straight. I would also support the idea of having Tana send out an email to that effect to get the word out more than the public notice boards, because as much as I think our board is important, I don't know that many people read our public notices, and it would be easy to miss that we're doing really such an impactful action for the building community as adopting new codes. So taking an extra step this time around to spreading the word, I would be fully in agreement that's the way to go.
What I will do when I send out that notice is I will add everybody under the building board on that email list, so you all will see exactly what I have sent out.
This is Mr. Ferdine, through the chair to staff. Can you remind the board the process of once the assembly approves the code amendments, the level of design that needs to be done, what sort of delay is there after assembly approval before the 2018 codes are actually being enforced both in the field and in permit review?
Through the chair, the assembly sets a date usually, and sometimes that date just happens to be the night they approve it. And basically what staff has done is we've been flexible, and that's how we allow the process to work, in that if you have a project currently under design, and if that project's like 50% or more designed on that date of adoption, we allow the project to remain under the previous codes. And it's really never been an issue.
Thank you. And through the chair to the staff, this is Mr. Ferdine again. And just because I know in the field everybody always worries that all of a sudden the inspector is going to come out and hammer them based on an updated code. That projects in the field are reviewed to the code that they were permitted under?
Correct.
Thank you.
As a follow-on question, what steps does the building safety group take to communicate to the public, really the contractor and engineering public, when this is adopted, when the official changeover occurs?
Again, we would send that out through our email contacts, and we'd advertise it on our website.
I also put up large posters if anybody walked in. This is from the previous times. Large poster says, hey, coming June 1st, 2012 building codes are going to be approved. You can look here on our website and that kind of thing. If anybody walks in now.
Okay. Well, thank you for the discussion on that topic. One other question I wanted to hit on before we move on is, what is controversial? What do we expect to be the big issues with this code adoption? I guess this is a question for staff. Where do you see the flashpoints are?
Through the chair, probably the retroactive fire sprinkler requirements for assisted living homes, and there's some fire sprinkler requirements in there for buildings and homes constructed in areas of the municipality that don't have a water supply. They don't have a municipal water supply, and again, just perusing through that significant changes document, that's where we really tried to pull out all the potentially contentious code changes.
Okay. Any final board comments before we move on from our 2018 code adoption topic?
I do have a few questions about some of the amendments that are in here. Do you want to deal with it at this time, or wait until the 16th?
I feel it would be better to deal with it before the 16th. Let's go ahead and start the topic, and depending on the level of detail that requires, we may continue. I ask that you continue the conversation offline, but for now, for the whole board to be aware, please bring them up. What you got?
My first one is regarding the living facilities that Ross just talked about. Do you believe that may require an enlarged water service in order to provide that sprinkler system?
I'll let Bart speak to that. Homes can typically feed a sprinkler system off a storage tank.
So this is Bart. So they've got two options. So most of the systems, we've seen some designs work with a 3/4 inch underground just fine if we've got enough pressure in the area. If they don't have a big enough water line, pressure needed, they've been adding on water storage tanks, and they pump onto them through the what they call a home hydrant. And, most of them have been functioning pretty decent at that.
How big is the tank?
Tanks have been averaging, some of the, depending on the calculations, about a 450-gallon tank. A lot of them are getting away with if they've got an automatic refill on them, and the refill rate is at a good rate that they can keep up to meet the 20-minute water supply demand if the fire department connection. Otherwise, if they don't put a fire department connection onto their home, then they have a 30-minute water supply for the house.
Would that be a 13R system or a 13D system?
13D.
A D?
Yeah.
Okay. That addressed one of three. The next one was regarding the blocking in the structural. It's my understanding that option 5 was removed from as being an option. Is that correct?
Through the chair, that's incorrect. Option 5 is still in there. We've basically put language in the significant changes thing explaining the issue to the assembly with the idea in mind that maybe one of the assembly members would take it upon himself to amend the thing to remove option 5. But option 5 is still in there.
Oh.
We've just added discussion in the significant changes document to explain the issue.
Okay, because I thought it was being recommended to, or it was being deleted, but it was still in the packet. This is how it's done, so I didn't understand that. Okay. And then my third one was more of a request that when we post the wind map that goes with, or excuse me, yeah, I guess it's the wind map that goes with 1609.3. If we can get the resolution higher than that, when you go to the map, it is really hard to read online. It's really muddled. And so if we get a better resolution map posted on our website, that would be very helpful.
Yeah, through the chair, there is a better resolution map posted. It's, you go to like the municipal homepage and you click on maps, and you'll find a very good quality map of the wind zones in Anchorage. Obviously, when you shrink it down to fit with 8.5 by 11 text, you're not going to be able to read it very well.
Yeah, but if somehow that could be maybe referenced or cross-linked on to from the website, that would be very helpful, because I've had a lot of trouble trying to find where I am when I'm right next to a line. Those are my comments. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, this is Mr. Steele in line of the question Mr. Boney has had. I had a couple that I wanted to ask intent, and one is in the IBC. It's 23-15-202 definitions. Under registered design professional, it says, for purposes of this chapter, a civil engineer licensed in the state of Alaska. I'm having a hard time understanding if that's to be an added sentence, or why it replaced the language which recognized the state's licensing process for design professionals. To me, the code reads better as it's published.
Yeah, through the chair, I don't know why we've gone and defined registered design professional. It's never really noticed that before.
Speaking for the IBC Structural Committee, I believe that was intended to clarify a special inspection requirement, where the special inspection, Chapter 17, allows the engineer of record to do the special inspection in some cases. And I believe we had attempted to clarify who that was for that specific requirement. It was not intended to be a general redefining of the term.
Okay. I would suggest that as the committees re-review this, the chair looks at this, because there are other design professional references, and I think the intent is maybe a grade with this addition over the language in the code. Perhaps adding a second sentence that recognizes special inspections in this reference might make it clearer in my mind. And then it's another, just a quick one in 23-15-1208-2. There's a prohibition of access panels in basically wet areas to attics. And I just wanted to clarify, we're talking personnel access. We're not eliminating access for piping valves, are we?
That was meant so that they don't put the attic access in the shower room. That wasn't meant. Yeah, that's attic access to a cold to a cold ventilated attic.
An access to a valve for controls or whatever, and the attic is accessible. Is acceptable.
Yeah, basically the local amendment says attic access shall not be located in a room containing bathing facilities. The reason is that you can't seal the vapor retarder.
Right. I mean, I think it's a design response that has to be addressed, and I understand the intent, but I was just wanting to make sure that if we were doing it so we eliminated any penetration of a vapor barrier, it's got to be make sure it's a heads up to the piping people that they don't put valves up there.
There wouldn't be valves up there anyway because it's cold. It's not tempered.
Well, as an attic, can it be a warm roof and still have an attic space?
Well, we'd make an exception for that. If the attic was within the thermal envelope, yeah, we'd make an exception for that.
Okay. And then a couple of quick other minor ones. In 2360, C102 through C109, it makes reference back to the administrative code reference, and I couldn't find one in the administrative code. If you'd maybe take a look at that, I'd appreciate it.
All that's doing is deleting all the administrative provisions from the from the energy code and referencing the administrative code. Every chapter has that amendment.
Okay. And then the other one was in 2310, 103, 316. Does the state of Alaska license structural engineers? Is the terminology proper?
Yeah, the state of Alaska licenses structural engineers now.
They do now, so it's not just a civil engineer and then with a structural focus.
Correct.
That's all I had.
Thank you, Mr. Steele. Any further board comments on local amendments or the 2018 code adoption cycle in general?
To the chairman, this is Eric Howling. For the two items I'm concerned with, would it be better if I work those out and then proposed amendments or changes through that process later down the road, or do I need to discuss it now?
How about if you give a summary of the issue for us and then plan on coming to the next meeting with it addressed and we'd be reviewing the proposed solution.
Okay. So the first issue is with the IMC. There's a requirement that in vehicle parking, parking garages, vehicle maintenance, and hazardous spaces, that all electrical or all sparking devices, ignition sources be elevated above 18 inches. And for years we've had an amendment in the IBC, I believe it's in the, is it the fuel code and the NEC, where we've described that it also is included in group F, M, and S occupancies with overhead doors. And it's been causing major grief in design of, for instance, big box stores, warehouses, that adjacent office areas, for instance. Everything has to be elevated about 24 inches. You can't have a break room because of the refrigerator or an oven in these adjacent areas. So it seems like it's an unneeded requirement to also require this elevation for the F, M, and S occupancies is what we were looking at. So that's one of them. And the other one is of my doing. It's the EV charging requirement. We were working on it back and forth, and then I dropped the ball and didn't get the response back from the electrical inspectors about what we were doing. And it's still stating that we need a 50 amp, 9.6 kVA capacity in the panel, and I'm feeling like that might be a bit stiff. And we were working language to reduce that or massage that to make it a little less painful for the contractors. And we didn't get that process all the way finished, so I would like to go back and close the loop on that.
Any thoughts from staff on either of those issues?
I would, through the chair, I'd just like to provide a little clarification on this because this is a pretty unique item. This is off cycle for the NEC, so we weren't amending the NEC on this cycle. We're sticking with the 2017. However, the administration, the mayor's office, wanted this provision, a provision like this, I should say, not necessarily this specific wording, but they wanted this EV charging capability added to the code, and hence staff kind of worked with Eric to create this amendment. And as Eric's saying, it still sounds like it's somewhat of a work in progress.
All right. Thank you for presenting this. We'll look forward to seeing the solutions at our next meeting. All right, last chance for board comments, discussion on this topic.
Mr. Soboleski just texted, Mr. Cowling, could you please reach out to me regarding your comment on the elevation of sparking devices? Okay.
He'd like me to email him my thoughts, or what's he?
He just said reach out to him.
Okay, I'll contact him.
Thank you.
Okay. Hearing no further comments, we'll be done with new business and move on to reports. Staff, would you be kind enough to give us a report? How are things going?
Oh, so we're pretty busy. We're 20% above last year at this point, and we're just working away. We're really encouraging people to use the electronic plan review software to minimize public contacts. We've made some changes in how we use the software. We got the plan reviewers working also as review coordinators, and I think that's speeding up the process of getting reviews through the system and whatnot. And yeah, so Bob, if you would like to add anything.
I would commend the industry for their efforts during the COVID time, that it did not contribute to the problem. The industry adopted safe practices that we didn't create. We didn't create hubs from work centers of industry out there, even when we had COVID positives in the workplace at different construction sites. So I think that's kudos on the industry. I would add that on the inspection side, particularly for retros where there's occupied living space, we've looked at means of enhancing the use of remote video inspections, i.e. a contractor using a phone with FaceTime working with an inspector also to reduce contacts and also frankly make things go faster. So we really appreciate working with the industry to keep people open and safe and building things during this time.
Ross, you said we're 20% above last year, and last year was the earthquake repair year, correct? So we're big picture looking pretty strong this year, right, Tate?
I wouldn't say pretty strong. Because the reason is because we've been on like maybe a 4-year slide, you know, and then the earthquake repair kind of helped bump us out of that slide.
Have you seen any sort of either leading indicators or bow wave effects from the COVID-19 where work slowed down and is speeding up, or vice versa?
The only indicators that surprised me was just speaking with design firms and design firms saying that they were busy.
opening it up to the board. Any other questions for staff?
To the chair, to the staff, this is Eric Cowling. The instructions for online submittal was revised, and the naming of the sheets was modified, and I was a little unclear if a decimal point is required in the numbering of the sheets, or if it's not desired. It's not clear what you're wanting the sheets numbered like.
Through the chair, basically, we want the file name to match the sheet name. So if it's sheet E101, we want the file name to be E101.pdf. You don't have to put extra dots in there. And the reason being is because you have detail bubbles that reference other sheets. And so in order to find that other sheet, you got to find the file.
I see. Okay. So you don't mind if there is a decimal point or not. It's just the fact that you just want it named exactly as the name of that or the number of that sheet. That makes sense.
Exactly. And what people have been doing, which strikes me as really strange, is their file names will include like the job name, the town name, the city name, the country it was designed in. They'd be like 60 characters long. And then at the very end, completely off your screen, is the sheet name, A101. So it's...
It makes perfect sense to me. That's exactly how we do it.
And I'm wondering, does anybody in the design community use folders anymore? You know? Or do they just have one folder with 10,000 sheets in it?
Actually, the way we do it is we print it all to one PDF that all of the sheets are in. So we're actually have to bust those PDFs up into individual named sheets. And the name of the file that we use has our job number, our name of the job, and other pertinent information that helps us whenever that file is in an email or when we sort it or search our drives looking for it. If it gets misplaced, we can find it by those names. So we don't ever, I don't think anybody as an industry make each sheet be an individual PDF like you're needing. It makes sense that probably the way your software works, but that would be terribly inefficient for us to keep having to click on different sheets. We just open the one file and it has all of the sheets in that one file.
Mm-hmm. This is Scott. I concur with that. It's a batch plot. We got one great big PDF that we send to the clients, the teams, etc. And then when it goes to the municipality, we break those into individual sheets and rename those for you. Now, a lot of firms will use a decimal point in their name. For instance, you may have a 1.03 or something like that. And computers don't like names with more than one decimal point. So sometimes we're substituting underscores for decimal points or something like that. I assume something like that doesn't necessarily show you awry, or does it on your side?
No, it doesn't. You don't need to use an underscore or anything. If a sheet A1.2, if you just put in there A12.pdf, we'll figure it out.
That's great. Thanks for clarifying. I see where you guys are at and why you're doing what you're doing.
Thank you. Any other board questions or comments for staff? Any other reports to be made?
I can let you know that the front counter is at least 3 to 4 days behind, and if you submit online or bring them in, just give you a heads up.
And what's driving that is we're turning over 80% of our counter staff who've taken promotions or moving out of state. We have 2 new folks starting on Monday, which we believe will mitigate that.
Great. All right, thank you very much. Moving on to general board member comments. Anybody have anything they want to get off their mind or anything they want to say? Hearing nothing, that brings us to our last item. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Move to adjourn. This is Scott.
I second the motion. This is Eric Cowling.
All right, we have a motion at second, and I believe that means we are done.
Thank you all.
Thank you all for your time. Appreciate you calling in and participating.